Hi, I'm Bill Lancaster, and I'm going to be your host for this video on lathe safety, a partial list. And I say that's a partial list because it's both the CYA and because the guild that I'm a member of has an hour-and-a-half video on lathe safety. This one's not going to be an hour and a half, I'll guarantee you. But I do have a list of things that I want to cover because I don't want to leave anything out. So let's get started so we can try to get through this as quickly as possible, because I know you don't want to waste a lot of time watching videos. We're talking about lathe safety, so we need to cover what you wear. The first thing you need to have is a face shield like this. It's also good to have safety glasses, but there are horror stories about chunks of bowls and other things flying off the lathe and hitting that. And so it's better to hit that face shield than hit your face. I'll guarantee it. I've been in shops and other places where they didn't even require safety glasses, much less a face shield. So be glad, always wear your face shields when you're working on a lathe. There are chips coming up from the wood. They hit you in the face. They hit you all around here. They hit you in the eyes. They go on top of your head. They get in your ears. It works. So wear a face shield. It's very simple. This particular one has a frame along the bottom, which gives it some extra strength. A lot of them don't have that. You pay a little bit more money for this, but not a whole lot. It's probably under $40, and you can replace these plexiglass shields if you want to, and you can get some covers that go on them too. So get a face shield. Wear the proper clothing. You see, no rings, no jewelry, no watches, short sleeves, all that. I wear a vest for warmth, and it has no sleeves. So these smocks are great. They keep chips out of your pockets and off your clothing, and they're just great. So I recommend having that, but do get yourself strip yourself of all jewelry, watches, no long sleeves. If you have long hair, you're going to need to have yourself a bunch of scrunchies or rubber bands to tie your hair up with. I have one somewhere. Anyway, I had a rubber band here. I have handed out rubber bands to a lot of women to just tie their hair back so they don't get it caught. They won't just jerk your hair out. This machine will pull your face into the machine. So you don't want to have your hair draping around the machine. There are horror stories about that. So no long sleeves, no long hair. A dust mask is really helpful. Here's a dust mask. I was turning some toxic wood that I didn't realize was as toxic as it was. It's called Ringus Tiger. Very rare wood, expensive wood. I was turning it for a friend. I didn't read the label on it. It talked about how toxic it was. It has an oil in it, kind of like poison oak or poison ivy. So I turned this for him, and I had a rash from there to my elbow, a bad rash. I'm almost over it now from turning that wood. I happened to have on an N95 mask. And I could see from the discoloration of the mask that it had caught a lot of the sanding dust from that lathe. I was so glad that sanding dust had not gone into my lung with that toxic poison ivy kind of oil, because it would have been really, really bad. So a face mask is good. It keeps the sawdust out of your lungs. You want that. You don't want to ever have any dust in your lungs. I have a dust collection system, and most shops do. This one runs off of a big 5.5 horsepower shop vac. There are others that have even bigger motors and systems. So get yourself some sort of dust collection thing. It's worth the cost to save your lungs. So just get it. I said no rings, no watches, no jewelry, no long hair. Gloves, if you use gloves, and some people need to get these things, especially if you're turning dry wood. The wood will be hot coming off the lathe, hitting you right there. So get yourself a glove. This is an old, I don't know what that is. It's a glove I bought somewhere cheap. You see I've cut off the ends of the fingers. You don't want to get those fingers caught in any part of the machine and pull your hand into it. I've cut off this part around the wrist because I don't want it to catch anything. These lathes and other power machines have no conscience whatsoever. They would just as soon cut your hand as cut the wood, so just get yourself the right equipment to do it with, because they will not stop for you. They will just keep on running, and they're very, very powerful. So if you use a glove, use that. You want to always turn the lathe speed down to 0 before you turn on the lathe. This is a Powermatic. Over here it's got the on-off button. It's got speed control. So if you watch this spot right here, if you can see that, I started out from 0. Now it's running at about 200 RPM. So you just really want to make sure that's turned down to 0. If you mount an imbalanced piece of wood on this lathe and turn it on and it's going fast, that thing's going to fly. It's going to go some direction or another. This is the line of danger, which is going to sling off one way or the other. So you want to stay out of the way of that. So always turn the lathe down to 0 speed before you turn it on. If you use a knockout bar, which you want to do with this, let me adjust this camera a little bit so you can see better what I'm doing here. And I think that will do the job. This is a spur drive, and this is a knockout bar I have here. You use the knockout bar to knock these things out. Don't grab it like this and then knock it with your knockout bar. You'll drive that point right into your hand. Hold it on the sides, tap it out like that. That's what you want to do. So get the thing out on the tailstock. These things will just back them up. This is called the quill. Just back the quill up, and at a certain point, it will knock the thing out for you. Don't use the knockout bar on that. Just take the quill out to get that out. So just watch out how you do that. Now, always take the knockout bar out of the spindle as soon as you use it. Never take your hand off that knockout bar. Take it out. If you start this lathe up with the knockout bar in, it'll start going around and around and around and around and around and around. It'll finally fly off, and you don't want to be around that thing when it lets go. So just get it out of there before you move on to anything else. I have a chuck here. This is a little Vic Mark 100. When you mount these chucks on the lathe, cradle them under your hand. You never want to drop one of these. It could really do some damage to it. These are expensive things. So hold it up there. I'm turning the spindle turning knob on the other side here to get it going, and just spin it on there. The last little bit, you can take a extra little spin to get it seated like that, and that should be seated pretty darn well. Now, let me put a piece of wood on here. I've done a little bit of work on this piece of wood to get it ready for you. So I've turned a tenon in what's going to be the top of the bowl, so it'll fit in this chuck. And I like this little Vic Mark chuck. It's been so true, and it will take this tenon pretty solid. This has a dovetail jaw. All the Vic Marks do, I think. Put your thumb against the center like that and tighten it up. Tighten all 4 screws. There are only 2, but you tighten them twice. Make sure they're good and tight. And all the way around twice. That's good and tight. Now, I've drawn a center line here so you can see that the gouge needs to hit whatever tool you're using. The gouge needs to hit on or just above that equator line. So if I'm using the the bowl gouge, I want the cutting tip, that little corner, to be right against that center line or just above it. So that's about right. I'm going to move it a little bit because I don't want to get too close. Always spin it before you turn it on to make sure it's not hitting anything, and that's just fine. You're going to have to adjust this tool rest a lot. Just get used to it. Every tool you use is going to be different, so you've got to make some allowances for that. This tool, for example, you see that's the parting tool. It's a lot wider, so it hits above the center line. You don't want that. You can have it just a little bit above it. I drop the tool rest down and back it up a little bit. Why? Back it up. I don't want this tool rest hitting the bevel. So I want it to be above there. Back it up a little bit more. Don't be afraid to stop the lathe always and get this tool rest adjusted for whatever you need to use on it. If you go from there to the skew, use the skew flat. You see that's around, it hits below the center line, so you got to raise it up. Just be patient. Raise it up. Get it in closer. On or above the center line. It's not there yet. Get the tool rest in there close. It's still below. Up a little bit more. Just get used to it. You're going to change this tool rest a lot, and it's okay. That will be just about right. Just where I want it. So that's how you get that thing, the height of the tool rest adjusted properly, the cutting edge on that center line or just above it. Always, 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 always put the tool on the tool rest first and then against your wood, like so. I've got to raise that thing up a little bit for this one, or lower it rather. You want to touch the tool rest first and then the wood. If you touch the wood first, it'll go wham like that and flip your tool up, and you don't want that to happen. Always, always put that tool against the tool rest first and then to your wood, never the other way around. Always stay on the left side of center. The lathe's going to be turning toward you like this. So you want to be always on this side where the lathe is pushing, the wood is pushing downward on the tool. If you go beyond that center line like this, it'll go up and over and right down against the tool rest. I have a friend who got a broken wrist doing that, so you always stay on this side of center. Know where that center is, and it's easy to see the center because as this thing spins, you will see where that center mark is. Now, I talk about adjusting the tool rest often. Mount the wood securely. So this wood is nicely in a tenon on the chuck. If you can use the tailstock, use the tailstock. It doesn't hurt to have that bit of insurance always with it. So I always do that. If you use CA glue, and we use CA glue a lot in wood turning. I've got a couple of types of CA glue over here. This is the thin, 8th version of the thin CA glue. That says thick. That's the thick CA. This is the medium CA glue. I've got a thin somewhere. Hang on a second. I got the wrong one out. So let me get the right one out. Here it is. It has a red top. So this is the thin CA. CA is cyanoacrylate. And so super glue, CA glue, whatever you get, this is what it is. And so you use it. If you have a little crack in your wood, you can put some of this CA in there. It'll wick down to the bottom of the crack and keep it from splitting any further. Sometimes you can even use a little CA glue and sawdust together to fill some spaces. But if you use CA glue, you've got to wait plenty of time for it to dry. If you turn this lathe on with CA glue in there, it's going to spin out, throw CA glue upward at your face. And so some face shields are marked no CA glue. And once you're using it with CA glue, because it'll spatter on the shield and be there forever. But if the CA glue gets in your eyes, I'm told it can make you blind. So please do not turn your lathe on without a face shield and without this CA glue being completely dry when you start it. If you buy a bowl blank, which is like this, and has wax on it, you have to take that wax off before you go too far with it. I call this a pillbox bowl blank. The grain goes this way in it. And if it has wax on it when you buy it, and that wax, you turn it off on the lathe and it gets on the floor, it will make that floor as slick as ice. And I've almost fallen on with these things because this wax will come off. It's a very, very slick substance. And so what I have to do if I buy one of these that has wax on it, and a lot of them do, is take a good paint scraper, scrape it off the top into a trash can, scrape it off the sides into a trash can, get rid of it, because you do not want that wax to get on your floor and make the floors really, really slick. So just get the wax off of there. I buy this wood from Got Wood down near Donald, South Carolina. This is kiln-dried maple, you'll see. I love this kind of wood, and also ash. And they will take that wax off for me. I'll ask them, and they'll actually saw just a they're experts at this thing. They'll saw the wax off and scrape it off the top or bottom. So they'll get rid of that stuff for me. You don't want to have wax on your floors. And I've only had experience with concrete floors, so they get extremely slick, and you do not want that. Sometimes you'll have a little crack in a bowl, and if you want to try to turn it anyway, and you've put the CA glue in there to stop the cracking, you can use strapping tape. This is not your typical wrapping tape. This has strings in it to make it very strong, give it a longitudinal strength, so you can wrap about 4 turns around your piece with that. If you're doing the inside of the bowl, to hold it in place while you do the inside. So that's another thing you can do is a strapping tape. It will hold the piece together if you give it enough turns, but don't hesitate to use a lot of tape. Just get with it, use a tape. It doesn't hurt that to do that, and it doesn't cost that much. If you use air pressure, and we all love our air pressure devices, this is I've got a little long nozzle air pressure device, nozzle with a little pancake compressor. So it's great for blowing sawdust off or blowing your lathe off or cleaning up the floors even. So this is great, but be careful with this around your body. A friend of mine who works at the Guild said, who a member of the Guild, used to work for a big company in town. He said, if you use one of these on your body, you'd be fired. If you use air pressure to clean your body, you would be fired from this company. That's how serious it is. He said you can blow your eyeball out with one of these things. So never use that on your face. Always, always, always be careful with this air pressure, because you don't want to have it doing any kind of damage to you. Now, I said in the title of this video, this is a partial list, and it is only that. It's just a partial list. I'm sure there's more to be said about lathe safety, but I'm not going to be able to cover everything. I'm certain of that. But I want to try to give you enough so that you can operate this lathe safely and at least get started on it. There's more to be said. Please don't think this is everything. And I'm doing a little CYA here because some idiot will come along and want to say, well, you didn't talk about so-and-so, and therefore you're liable. I'm not going to be liable for what you do apart from what I have told you you'll have to find other safety videos that can cover whatever it is you're talking about. This video covers just what I have just told you, and that's all it can do. So I'm sorry to be rattling on so long, but it's worthwhile to do that. And so I hope you got a lot out of this, and we'll see you next time.